Hello. This is going to be our Chapter 6, Public Opinion and Political Action chapter. We're going to try this again. Next week's going to be, well, this week, I guess, when you get this, is going to be a little bit wild with OGTs. So we're going to do this on video again, and hopefully you like it. If you don't, tough noogies. This chapter, Chapter 6, is a very good one. This is going to kind of springboard us into things that I think are a little bit more entertaining. I prefer this a little bit more to the other stuff. I don't know if you can hear the band in the background. I hope that's not distracting. But essentially, we are talking about people's opinions regarding policy in this country. If you've been paying attention to the news at all, it's quite clear that people in America don't agree on anything. We have very diverse ideas about what policy should be, and that's what this chapter is about. How do those form? How do we get the ideas that we have in our head? How do we decide what we want to be or what we want to believe or who we want to vote for whatever reason? As always, you should be reading. This is not going to replace reading. You need to be reading the textbook. We're going to talk about that stuff in class. We're going to talk about this in class, and I'm going to quiz you on this stuff in class to make sure that you are watching these videos. Sound good? All right. Try to be a little more brief than the last video here, but we'll get going. All right, so what is public opinion? We know what an opinion is. We know what the public is. Put them together, that's your definition. It's the distribution of the population's beliefs about politics and policy issues. So we have a very wide variety of beliefs in our country about political issues and what we believe. And that's what we're going to be studying this chapter. Political science majors out there. This is something that you'll focus on a lot in college. Why do people believe what they believe? What do people in the South believe differently than people in New York City believe? What does geography have to do with it? What does religion have to do with it? What does race, gender, age have to do with it? And it's a very important topic. I really enjoy it too. So let's get going. Carry on. Definitely a word you should know. It will refer to the demographics of maybe a neighborhood. In this case, demography, the word, the definition for our purposes, it's the science of population changes. What do we mean by science? I mean, what's the legitimate mathematics behind it? How do we know where people live? How is population changing? Are people shifting from different places in the country? Are people coming into our country from other countries? Are people leaving our country to go to other countries? That's demography, but mostly we're going to need to know within the United States where people live and why they live there and why they leave there and why they go to the places that they're going. Push and pull factors, 10th grade stuff. So understand that when I say demography, it's just population change. How do we study it? The big question, I guess, is how do we know what the... Sorry, hold on a sec. Okay, how do we know where people live? We already know from the Constitution that we have a bicameral legislative branch separated into the Senate, 2 per state, and the House, based on representation. Representation of population. Where do people live? How do we know where people live? How do we know how to represent people? Hopefully in your head you're thinking, oh, I know how we pick or how we figure out where people live. It happens every 10 years. It's something that we should be familiar with at this point. I'm asking the question. Hopefully you can see that. Sun just came on a little bit. Answer is the census. You've heard of the census. Maybe you've hidden underneath your mattress when the census people knocked at your door. If you're scared of the government or the man's going to get you, you might not like the census. Some Americans feel like it's the government kind of encroaching upon them. It's not. It's the government trying to figure out where you live. Why do they want to know where I live? They want to know where you live because they need to know how many representatives your House member has. We need to know where you live so we know how to represent you. We being the legislative branch particularly, but all of our politicians. So the census happens every 10 years. So it happened in 2000, it happened in 2010. Guess when it's going to happen next? Not until you're all, out of college, kids and houses and wonderful lives ahead and behind you. But the census is a requirement in this country. Every 10 years, they send out things in the mail. Let's see what I have up here. I already told you why. They send things out into the mail, and if you are like me and you're not paranoid about the government, you fill it out. I have a wife. Her name's Katie. I have a son. His name's James. All three of us live in our home in Westerville. Here's my address. I'm a teacher. She's a fashion something. I send that back in. It's done. That's it. That's my job. Now, if I don't send that in, that's when I start getting the phone calls. If you don't answer the phone calls, you might start getting more letters in the mail. You don't respond to those, then they send people out to actually knock on your doors. You don't answer your door, they're just going to keep hassling until they can try to figure out who and where you are. Sometimes there's some overlap if you think about it when you guys go off to college. If your parents send in something that says they have 2 kids living at home, but you're actually living at a college, and you fill one out at a college, you've just been counted twice, and that happens. But for the most part, we're just trying to get an idea of how many people are in and about this country. You'll read about that on 178, but you should definitely understand that. When I say why, there's a fancier term that I don't know if we've come across. Let's see. No, it didn't come up yet. But when I ask why, and I say it's a requirement or a rule, where do we get our requirements and rules in this country? One place. Yeah, you're right. The Constitution. But hopefully you know that from reading the Constitution, it says that every 10 years we have to figure out where people live. We have to take a census. It's constitutional. And like I said, the next one won't be till 2020, but the 2010 one came with a lot of controversy, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the chapter. To really understand why our political beliefs are so diverse in this country, it's important to understand what our actual diversity is as a nation. People have different cultural ideas in this country. We've talked about this before in class. We are a very unique nation in that we are a nation of immigrants. Everyone in this country, unless you're 100% pure Native American, can trace back in your family tree some immigration. Some of us can trace it back to our parents. Some of us ourselves in this class are probably immigrants to this country. But most Americans, going back 2, 3, 4 generations, can trace themselves back to some immigration in this country. What does that mean? We are a country of tons of different cultures, tons of different ideas and beliefs about the world. So how do we have a democracy where people make decisions, voting-wise, to represent themselves when everyone has different ideas? So we're going to look at those waves of immigration. It starts on page 179. We're not going to get too into detail of it. There was a couple major waves of immigration. The first one, late 19th century, this is when we have more of our European immigration, English, Irish, German, and Scandinavian. This is kind of when my family came in. I'm mostly Irish. I'm not, what do people always think? I'm either Italian or even get Hispanic sometimes, but no, I'm English and I'm Irish mostly. Second wave, this is going to be early 20th century. So we're talking, 100 years ago. This is when we have our Italians, Jewish populations, Polish. We have Russians. These are all the people passing through Ellis Island in New York City. And wave 3, this is the biggest, the last 20 years, 30 years. We have Cubans, Central Americans, Mexicans, Asians, mostly highly skilled immigrant group in American history. That's the Asians. Keep it up, Asians. Well done. This is, we can see this at West. We have a large population of Cubans, so maybe not Cubans, Mr. Fabregas. We have Central Americans. We have Mexicans. Where my Mexicans at? What's up? Hey, Anna. We have Asians, definitely. We have all sorts of people at West High, but that's not just here. That's all over the country, especially in cities. And it's really changing the way policies get made in this country because it's changing who we vote for. We talked about that a little bit last chapter with Hispanics being the largest minority group, making up almost a quarter of the population. That is a group that stays pretty close in its ideas. So if you're a politician, you want to get elected, especially on a federal level or even a state level in states that are heavily Hispanic like maybe California or Florida, you have to keep in mind the policies that interest Hispanic Americans. Asian Americans, fastest growing group right now. Who knows where we'll end up with them. Groups of immigrants bring with them different political opinions and beliefs. Very exciting stuff. The melting, the Great American Melting Pot is what we call it. Your textbook definition of melting pot is mixing of cultures, ideas, peoples that has changed American nation. Essentially, if you're making a soup and you put in all these different ingredients and you stir it up nice and it all mixes together and you end up with one delicious soup, it's a melting pot of different things that become one great thing. And that's what, when people refer to our country as a melting pot, that's what they're referring to. We're taking all these different nationalities and races and cultures, ideas, mixing them all up and eating some of that America. It's awesome. It's why our country is so great and so diverse. Well, it's great because it's diverse. So that's the melting pot I just talked about. This came up in the last chapter. I don't remember which one of you guys had it, but the minority majority. By 2060, guess what? They sped that up a little. Now we're looking at about 2048. So update that. My bad. 2048, we'll have a minority majority. I ask, what the heck is that? You know what that is, because you come to class, you pay attention, and you get good grades on your test. In case you forgot, though, if immigration continues as is, by 2048, African Americans and Hispanics will outnumber white people. White Americans. It sounds a little more politically correct. White Americans will be outnumbered by Asians and African Americans. So right now, we're talking about race. African Americans, Hispanics are the minority. But in the next 20, 30, 40 years, white is going to be the minority. So our country is getting more and more and more diverse. Those first two waves of immigrants, mostly European, is what made this huge white population. But then this last wave that we have, which is even bigger than those waves, is of all these different countries, primarily Hispanic and Asian. Exciting stuff. I said, that's a joke, Mr. Murray's final student loan payment. But actually, if all goes well, my final student loan payment will be in March because I've changed my mentality on paying bills. But we'll save that for later. Old joke. This is a PowerPoint from last year. I didn't update. If you look at this chart, I believe, is in your book, but we have white non-Hispanics, percentage of in our country. That's me. And then Asian Americans, African Americans, and Hispanics growing. Those lines should cross within the next 20, 30, 40 years. Little math in there. Population and regional shift. First of all, before I even get to this, why are we talking about this? Why am I talking about immigration? Just to bring you back together here, just keep in mind immigration is why our political spectrum is so wide, why we have so many different ideas in this country, and why we have so many representatives in Washington battling with different ideas back and forth for policy decisions. It's because we have so many different people in this country that want so many different things. How many U.S. senators are in the U.S.? Please get this right. You got it. 100. There's 50 per state. No, 50 per state. There's 52 per state. Hopefully you know that there's 50 states. Some people every year, some kid yells out 51 states. I haven't read the newspaper today, but last time I checked, we have 50 states. There's 2 senators in each state. We know this. How many people are in the House of Representatives? That hasn't changed in a while. 435. Technically, I worded that wrong. There's 335 because I'm counting that other 100 from the Senate. What is that based on? I already said it. You already know. The House of Representatives is based on population. A bigger state with more people in it is going to have more members in the House representing them. A smaller state like South Dakota, population-wise, is going to have less people representing them. I think like 1. So every 10 years after the census is done, we rearrange the House seats. What is this called? If you read, you know what it's called. If you didn't read, we've never said the word in class. It's called reapportionment. It's a word you might not be able to say. Oh, there you go. It's a very important word that you must know. Must know reapportionment. You must know reapportionment. Got that? It just means we have to reapportion. We have to reassign these members. So let's say in Ohio, for example, let's say, and this is just, it's not a real number. I think it's close to a real number. Let's say we had 15 representatives in Ohio in 2010. And in 2020, Ohio's population doubles. We need some more representatives. So we need to take some of these 435 and sprinkle them into Ohio. But where do those people come from? Let's say they all came from New York. So New York's going to have to take its amount of representatives and send that over to Ohio. So if New York had 15, we had 15, and we double our population, and New York's cuts in half, they have to send, 7.5 over here. Not actually the people, because as you know, to be a member of the House, you have to be a member of that state, but it's the actual number of representatives. Following me? I'm not trying to confuse you here, but essentially when people move, the number of representatives has to move with them. It's called reapportionment. Not sure if you got that. That might be a question I ask you on a little, not a reading quiz, a watching quiz. I'm going to give you watching quizzes to see if you're actually watching these. So if I do, I'm going to ask you what reapportionment is. I might even ask you something simple like, where did I get my coffee cup? That'll prove that you read, right? Can you read that? I hope so. Question 1. Well, I didn't go there. Someone got it for me. If you ever want to buy Mr. Murray something, buy him a coffee cup. Make him cookies. Or I like pens and pencils too. Definition. Political socialization. This is my favorite stuff. What socializes you into a particular political belief? Some of you might already think you know what you are. I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. I'm a Democrat. I'm a liberal. Save the trees. You're very young. That's going to change. It may or may not. But this is the process in which an individual, you, acquires his or her political orientations. What is the process that caused you to become politically oriented one way or the other? Drums are kicking right now. The knowledge, feelings, and evaluations regarding the political world. Can we guess some? We're trying to get what things in your life have caused you to become more conservative or more liberal. You're pretty young. You may not have ever thought of this. I'm going to have to shut the window. Excuse me. What caused you to be who you are politically? I would recommend, obviously you don't have to go with this, but if you're not a political person yet, you will be when you're done with this course. So I recommend leave that wide open. Let that roll for a while. Don't make any big decisions yet about who you think you are politically. But these are the things that shape an American. Mr. Murray, I'm very politically socialized. I have a very specific ideology that I live by and that I vote with. How is that formed? How did I become this way? How did your teachers or your parents or your grandparents become this particular way politically? Here's the biggest. School. Obviously, right now what's happening in my class could politically socialize you. Your social studies classes, it's called social studies for a reason. Liberal college professors. That's a joke, sort of, not really. Typically across this country, college professors are very liberal. You will see this next year. They don't hide it. They don't present things very well-rounded. They should if they're a good teacher. And that's going to be my goal this year. If you ever feel like I am socializing you in one direction or another, trying to make you more conservative or trying to make you more liberal or more Republican or more Democrat, I'm not doing my job very well. My job, my goal for you is for myself is to give you such a wide understanding of all political viewpoints that you are informed enough to make a solid decision for yourself. So hold me to that. If I don't, too bad. But that's one way. This is a real thing you need to know. All joking aside. School is one way people are politically socialized. College especially, but high school civics class, which you're partaking in right now, is where this usually gets the ball rolling, where you really start to think about and understand and talk about politics. I'm only going to do a half hour here, so I got 10 minutes. Family. most powerful method. The hands down biggest predictor. Is someone a Republican or a Democrat? What are their parents? That's going to be your best indication of what they are. Are they conservative or liberal? What are their parents? Most people go through kind of a rebellion phase. I even did, where you kind of aren't what your parents are. You're the opposite, but eventually come back around. Family's the biggest predictor of how someone is going to vote and how they are politically socialized. Family's huge. Obviously, you spend the most time with them. The mass media. We call this the new parent. This is going to be YouTube. This is going to be Facebook. This is going to be Twitter. A lot of kids are being raised on the internet or raised in front of a television. This is the new parent. So the mass media is another way of politically socializing people. And did you read the Nazi math example on 186? Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Governments throughout the world use schools to attempt to raise children committed to the basic values of a system. Social studies class, that's the point of it. We want you to be part of a system. For years, American children have been successfully educated about the virtues of capitalism and democracy. We teach you that it's a good thing. It is a good thing, but that's why we teach you it, because we want you to believe that too. In the hands of an unscrupulous government, though, educational socialization can sometimes be a very dangerous tool. Countries use socialization in school to try to brainwash, in a sense, their students. So in Nazi Germany, textbooks were used to justify murderous policies. This is an example from a Nazi-era math book. This is a math problem in Nazi Germany. If a mental patient cost 4 marks a day in maintenance, a cripple cost $5.50, and a criminal costs $3.50, and about 50,000 of these people are in our institutions, how much does it cost our state at a daily rate of 4 marks? And how many marriage loans of 1,000 marks per couple could have been given out instead? If you think about what they're asking there, they're saying, how many lovely things could we do if we just maybe killed off those crippled people and perhaps got rid of the criminals? We don't need them, right? We could use that money for something better. That's crazy stuff, but that's in a Nazi textbook. Governments can use this to brainwash people. So, anywho, moving on. That's some serious socialization. All right. Almost done here. We are careful to prevent such indoctrination. I say careful because some teachers do it. I'm really going to try my best not to. But if you have a teacher that you feel like is only talking bad about one political idea and only good about another, in my opinion, I don't think they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But in my experience in college especially, I think college 100% across the board, every professor I ever had was very one-sided about their political ideas. High school, not so much. I had some more well-rounded teachers who really presented all the ideas out there. So how do we socialize our people? How do you become socialized? Mostly school, family, and media. You don't need to write this. This is an Einstein quote. I love this quote, and we're gonna end with this. What can schools do to defend democracy? Should they preach a specific political doctrine? I believe they should not. If they are able to teach young people to have a critical mind and a socially oriented attitude, they will have done all that is necessary. Einstein, man. It's a great quote. He's saying that we don't need to teach you that democracy is the best thing in the world. We need to teach you to be creative, open-minded, and give you freedom. And naturally, you will see and understand that this is the best system. This is the best way to live. Giving people freedom, letting them be democratic in voting and their policy decision-makings and having their opinions. All this stuff is going to naturally come together. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I should have been a plumber quote. That's another quote of Einstein's. I like that one too. Obviously, he's pretty smart. Oh, speaking of college loans, this is, you guys want to hear this? They're going to ask me for money. Hello? Ah, they hung up. Must have heard me making fun of them. Maybe they'll call me back. But anyways, I should have been a plumber quote. That's a good one. Obviously, if you don't know what Einstein is, maybe you should look that up. How do we measure public opinion is what we'll cover next time. But let me, real quick, bring us all back together from the beginning. We're talking about what makes Americans believe what they believe. What makes somebody politically socialized in one direction? Later on, not the band. Later on, we're going to get into what I'm talking about when I say socialized. We haven't covered what a liberal is, what a conservative is, where a Democrat and Republican fall into that spectrum. We're going to talk about all that. We can do that right now. Yes, time out. Okay, last thing I promise. What do I mean by this political spectrum? Bright light on there. I'm going to draw this real quick, and hopefully it'll make some sense to you. Let's say this is our full spectrum. We've got a middle here. Right. People say right-winged. When you say right-wing, you're talking about conservative. My words are too short. Talking about a conservative. The farthest conservative you can be is the least amount of government. That's complete anarchy, chaos. No government whatsoever. Everyone just does whatever they want. That's no government. The farthest left you can be is the most government possible. Yes, you're right. Socialism, communism. I'll make that red. Communism. Now, most Americans are not anarchists or communists. Most, hopefully none of you are, but if you are, all the power to you. You're crazy. Most Americans are going to fall somewhere in between there. The more to the right you are, the more conservative you are. So let's say this is conservative. This is our right-wing conservatives, when you hear that terminology. Left-wing, this is going to be, stop using red, this is going to be our liberals. Liberal, conservative. Some of you call someone a lefty or left-winged, you're calling them a liberal. You call someone a right-winged conservative or a righty, or you're on the right of the political spectrum, you're talking about a conservative. Now, where do our political parties fall? Well, our two political parties, major political parties, our D's and our R's, fall just outside of the center, I would argue. So, super liberal, somewhere in here you're going to have a Democrat. You want a little more government in your life. You want government to, tax people, spend, things like that. Over here you got your Republicans. You want a little less government in your life. You're not an anarchist. Over here you're not a communist. You're just this is the perfect middle. You're either a little to the right, a little to the left. Now, this is my opinion. This is opinion. This is obviously no scientific data going on here. But I would argue our current president, Barack Obama, is a little more liberal than most presidents. So maybe we could say Obama's over here. I would say Bill Clinton, he was pretty liberal, but maybe not as much. Put Bill here. George Bush, previous president, George W. Bush, second one. I would say he's, right around the Republican, GW. But I would say Ronald Reagan maybe was a little bit more conservative. So he's a little bit farther right. So when I say political spectrum, that's what I'm talking about. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Are you to the right? Are you to the left? Are you in the middle? Maybe you could draw yourself on there somewhere and see where you fall. Pick something right now. I think that'd be a cool challenge. Put yourself somewhere on that line. And then at the end of the year, maybe we can do it again and see if you've moved left or right. There's things that cause us to move left or right throughout our life, like how much money we make, where we go to school, how old we are. That's all going to be something we develop throughout our lifetimes. But hopefully, so far we're off to a good start, and you're paying attention to this, and you're enjoying this. This is when I think the course is going to get a lot more fun. So until next time, I'm Mr. Murray, and I'll